welcome to LawSoc's first in-person speaker event of the year, and actually one of Trinity's first in-person speaker events since the outbreak of the pandemic. We're delighted to be welcoming Ms Laura Whitmore to Trinity and to LawSoc. She is obviously receiving the Allii Proelio Award, brand new award, which our amazing auditor Anne Swan is going to tell you all about. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to the women of the hour. But yeah, enjoy. And there is going to be a Q&A after, so get your thinking caps on. We're going to have about 15 minutes for Q&A if you want to ask any questions. Okay, thanks guys.
We're just like standing at the door, but they can see us. They know we're here.
Dramatic
walk in.
Wouldn't be like us. So, Laura, before we begin the interview process, I just want to explain a little bit about the award to everyone watching here today, and before we present the award itself. Is that okay?
Yes, please do. Thank you.
So, bear with me. The Law Society was founded in 1933, and for 88 years, it has strived to provide its members with opportunities to socialise, engage in new phenomena, and advance discourse. So the Allii Proelio Award is an integral part of that endeavour. Today we are very proud. It marks an important day in the history of our society as we give the Allii Proelio to its first recipient, Ms Laura Whitmore. So thank you very much, Laura.
Thank you, honour.
And it is awarded to those who have broadened perspectives. And what makes today, as Ruth has already said, even more special is the fact that Ms Whitmore is one of our first in-person guests since the outbreak of COVID-19. So it's a big day for us today, Laura. Thank you so much.
It's nice to see people as well as in real life. And hello.
So, Ms Whitmore, you have been nominated for the award for a myriad of reasons, both on screen and off screen. You have broadened perspectives and have inspired young people across the nation. As a TV presenter, radio host, actress, model, you are a role model to young women, young people, and to all those who aspire to make a name for themselves in your industry.
So nice.
So you have broadened perspectives through your activism and your writings, and we would like to thank you for the positive impact that you have had and continue to have on our college community and our college society. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Your work for Moustache Movember and Because I Am a Girl is truly inspirational, and your strength, humility and candidness, which is so evident both on screen and through your words in your best-selling novel, has truly made such an impact on all of us here today, as you can clearly see. So it's impossible to list all the reasons why we are honouring you today, Ms Whitmore, but it is our honour to have you here today. So without further ado, I'd like to present you with the Allii Proelio Award.
Thank you so much. Wow, thank you. Bling! Oh, good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. I did say I wanted a bit of bling like that. Get on a rope and
you can both have weapons on night time.
Thank you. How lovely. And also, it is such an honour. I know it's been a really difficult year for so many people, and just to kind of, even just coming onto campus and seeing people walking around in that buzz, I know for a lot of you it's been probably really difficult. So when there was a chance to be here in person, I jumped at it because I'm so over Zoom.
I think it's safe to say that everyone here shares that thought. So, Ms Whitmore, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. Honestly, it's such an honour, and just to be here and just to see everyone here and just to be asked to come here and come home. I always feel when I live in London now and just coming back to Dublin just feels like home. the air is better, it's fresher.
Yeah, I agree. So if you wouldn't mind, Laura, can we just start at the very beginning? So, as you say, you're back home. So
Yeah.
I think, in your novel, which we'll be discussing later, you talk about your first memory and how, you're with your mom and you're moving into Bray and how you're only 2 years old and your mother was wearing like a power suit.
Shoulder pads, 80 shoulder pads, which I'm a big fan of now as well.
So can you tell us just a bit about your childhood and what was it like growing up in Bray?
Yeah, well, I think for anyone, like where we come from shapes us. And where we grow up. And it doesn't define you, but it definitely shapes you. And I think I'm really lucky that I've always had strong role models in my life. I talk about my mother, I talk about my nanny, and my dad is here, his mom. I remember she passed away when I was 10, but I really remember her as being like a strong female role model, and I'm really, really lucky. And I think I talk out a lot about women's issues in today's society, but I can only imagine what it was like growing up a female in the 80s and having a child and all the things that we come up across with my grandmother and my great-grandmother and all the things that they had to go through to allow me to be in the space where I am now. So I kind of look back at my childhood with fondness, with embarrassment as well, because that's what childhoods are.
Who doesn't?
Who doesn't? And I guess I kind of look back at that little girl and with hopefulness, because I think all of us when we grow up, everyone who's here today and whatever you're, studying here, you're hopeful for your future, and we all have that kind of hopefulness, sometimes mixed with naivety, also mixed with fear, and that's what it's like, I suppose, when you look back at your childhood. You don't know what to expect, and you'll never know. You just have to live it and go through it. But I do look back at my time in Bray, and I stayed there last night. It's lovely. I actually slept in my old childhood room last night, which still has so much stuff in it. I don't know why there's so much stuff in it. But it's lovely. But I do look to those role models around me that have helped me. That I've got a strong mother and a father who's very supportive of a girl who just wants to run off to London to be on the television. And I think all of that is really, really important to have that, because not all of us have it. And if you don't have it from your family, you don't have to have it from your family. You can get it from your friends and from other people around you.
So would you say like your family members have been some of perhaps your biggest role models throughout your life?
Yeah, we don't necessarily always agree on things.
Yeah.
That's all right. Yeah, and I think I always say it's really important to surround yourself with people who are like-minded, and you don't have to agree on everything. I think it's the same thing when it comes to friends. I work in an industry that can be quite cutthroat and can be quite overwhelming. But I always speak in my book about the tribe that you have around you, those people that you have around you. Just make sure that they're good people. And it doesn't really matter about the white noise and all the other stuff that's going on, because you kind of have your little community that will be there for you. And that can be family, or it can be your chosen family.
No, absolutely. So the support group, all these role models of yours, they've really had such an impact then on your life and how you've chosen to...
Yeah, and even like Irish women, I just love Irish women, and I speak a little bit, I'm obsessed with Mary Robinson, and I just remember when I was 7 doing this, I speak in the book about it, I did this like school project on her, because I thought she was just like so inspiring and showed emotion as well, and for a woman head of state to show that emotion and still be really, really respected, and it's okay to have feelings and go through everything. And then I had to interview her as part of my job. I do a radio show on BBC, and I remember my mum saying, "Do you want me to send you over the school project so you can show her?" I was like, "You know what? I won't." But yeah, I think we're really, really lucky. There's like brilliant female broadcasters, and I'm just really, really lucky to have had that and find that. And I think, hearing your words really connects to me and is really lovely, because I have had so many role models. If I can in any way inspire people to kind of speak up for themselves or do what they want to do, even if it's not necessarily what's expected of you.
No, absolutely. I think it's even, I know I was going to ask, how did it feel meeting your, external role models who aren't necessarily familiar?
Yeah.
Which I'm experiencing right now. It's definitely really important and meeting them.
Sometimes it's scary though, because I've interviewed loads of people. Like I started off on MTV, and I've interviewed loads of musicians who aren't always that nice. Some are lovely, but then some are, and you're like, sometimes like, please be nice, please be nice. But thankfully, most people are really, really lovely.
We won't ask you.
We won't say who the not nice
We
ones
won't
are.
name and shame.
You're allowed to have a bad day.
Yeah.
Just once.
So after, secondary school, you went and studied journalism in DCU. So
I feel like this is my life.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get a red book.
How did you enjoy college?
Yeah, just speaking before we started this, because I grew up in Bray, a lot of my friends went to Trinity, and I really wanted to study journalism, and I remember I really loved drama as well, so I really was thinking about doing drama at Trinity, but in the end I chose journalism, and because it was a little bit further than Bray, I got to live away from home, otherwise I would have had to get the dart in, which is quite nice, but...
just away enough.
But just away enough. But I think it's really important those years for me was to grow up, not just for the academic side, and journalism was great. My first year was 12 hours a week though, guys, so there's a lot of time in.
No one else here is doing 12-hour-a-week courses.
Just for the first year. Not a lot of people lasted that first year though. But then I realised what was so great about me, for college life for me, was you kind of had to be involved. Like you could try and kind of skip through the first year, or you could really get involved. And for me, that was like being on the Students' Union, writing for the college paper, being in the drama society, and doing all those extra things, like how important these societies are. And to this day, the people I met in those societies are like my best friends for life.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember joining the LawSoc and was like, oh, my people. And then we did Antigone was the first play I did. We did Macbeth, and I just really found my people. So as important as the academic side was and having that degree, it was the other side as well, and that really made me come out of my shell.
The holistic experience.
Yeah, really, really important.
Laura, when we were talking out earlier, you were telling me how you studied a year abroad. Well, firstly, actually, where did you go?
That was another reason I wanted to do that degree, because you got to go away. So I studied at Boston University in the States, and Boston's brilliant because it's just a city of students. I think there's like over 80 colleges and universities there. And I just hit 21. Perfect age. And for me, I love travel. I've always loved traveling. As the one thing I can't recommend enough. We talked about, you're in your final year. And I was like, just get out there and see it, because for me, going to Dublin and living there seemed quite exotic from Bray. But then going to London, where London isn't England. London is like this multicultural kind of melting pot of all these cultures and religions and understanding people that I didn't normally see because I just didn't have it in my home. Like everyone I knew was like Catholic or Protestant. Now my friends just come from all different types of religious backgrounds, and it's just really important to see that. So going to Boston was brilliant because it opened my eyes out to a different side of student life. They also had a really nice campus, so their broadcasting equipment was really good. But yeah, for me, it's just travel and just seeing the world, and that was another part of it as part of my degree.
So would you say almost that like traveling and this diversification of your environment, was that perhaps one of the biggest things you learned in college?
Yeah, I think so. Just meeting different people. Like my secondary school was in like an all-girls convent. The fact that there was boys in my class was like a big thing. So yeah, I think that was really, really important. And also for my career going forward, I know you'll probably get to it, but like my first job for MTV, which was a music channel, and I was covering lots of music, and I had a very specific taste of music that I liked. I quite liked rock and roll and a bit of pop, but I had to go to interview musicians that I didn't really know much about, and rappers and more kind of urban music, and like everything from garage to like I was in Ibiza and all the clubs, and it was just, I was just immersed with all these different types of music that I didn't know, and I was like, I have to be open to that, and I think that's really important. And as you said, diversify yourself as much as possible, and I got that from traveling, from seeing the world, because it's very hard to. I know we have phones these days and we can scroll and we can see the world that way, but see the world through your own eyes as much as possible.
Absolutely, broadening your perspective.
Exactly.
As it says in the award.
Exactly, there you go. Yeah. Literally.
So, as you just mentioned there, your career really kicked off back in 2008 when you entered the MTV competition and became quite literally the face of MTV. You I think was it 3,000 contestants to get the job, which is phenomenal, like crazy. So yeah, did you ever expect such huge success at such a young age?
No. I was quite ambitious, and you have to take opportunity when it comes. I just finished my degree. I was interning at News Talk radio station, and I just was made permanent. And I was finding it really difficult. The newsroom environment I found quite difficult. It's quite, news tends to be quite negative. You very rarely have to cover positive stories.
Bad news travels faster.
Exactly, and I remember one morning going in, and there was this really bad car crash on the M50, and I remember thinking, oh good, we have something to talk about. And I remember going, oh, okay, what am I becoming? And simultaneously there was this competition going on MTV looking for a news reporter for MTV News, which is much more entertainment and music news. But you know what? There are comparisons to what I learned in News Talk to what I did in MTV. From if you have to interview a politician or a councillor and interview a rock star, they're kind of similar. They might look different, but everyone's just a person. You can connect with people and just have a chat like we're having now. And I do think I learned a lot through News Talk that helped me. But yeah, I did just enter a competition and won it. And actually, I think one of the first people I told was my dad, who's here, and I think he said something like, it mustn't be a fix then, because you won it. Because I think he said something like that. Because I was unknown, and there were people there that had been on the telly, more experienced than me.
And how did that opportunity even come about? Kind of from Ireland, I feel like we're so, in a way, removed from that industry.
I just entered it. I just saw it on the television. I saw it on MTV that they were promoting that they needed a new presenter for MTV Europe. And I entered it. And I think that's a really important thing for everyone to remember, that opportunity doesn't come to you. You have to knock down those doors.
Absolutely.
And to this day, I get loads of people go, how do you get into television? How do I get there? And I'm like, everyone has a different journey and a different path. But I'm like, what have you done to get it? I'm like, well, I don't really know what to do. I'm like, well, it's not going to come to you.
No.
And even with that competition, around that time, I had other friends who would have liked to have gotten to television. And they were like, oh, you're so lucky you won that. And I'm like, but did you enter it? And they were like, no. I'm like, well... So you got to be in it to win it.
Absolutely proactive. I always remember my accounting teacher back in school used to say, the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yeah.
But it's definitely so true.
I love that, yeah. Because I do believe in luck, but you have to make your own luck of it sometimes.
Work ethic, which you clearly have in bundles.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And 14 years later, you've gone on to present.
It's crazy it's been that long, because I still think because I won a year's contract with MTV, and then it just kind of rolled on every year, and I stayed with them until I left, and I think that was I was with them 7 years. But I still think I'm new. I still think I'm new on telly. I still feel like, it's my first day.
It's funny because you've presented, I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, the after show. You've
so
been
fun.
on Strictly, Come Dancing.
I like challenging myself. I like putting myself in pressure. And also, you've got one life. I just feel like you've got one life, and life's too short to do something you don't want to do, and life's too short to not do something you want to do.
So push yourself outside of those boundaries.
Yeah.
And I think, when we've all been watching you, well, I have anyway, for the past, 4 months.
I know, it's that 9 p.m. relief of
Love Island's on tonight.
I was just sitting at home watching it most of the time as well.
So how did it feel hosting, one of the biggest shows on TV right now?
I find that's it's one of my favourite shows. It's been my favourite shows for years. It's probably one of the most difficult jobs I've done.
Quite demanding.
Quite demanding. Not even as a job, because presenting-wise, when I was doing I'm a Celebrity, that was live every day in Australia, the other side of the world, a different time zone. We were working crazy hours because it was UK time, but we were in Australia. So I used to get up at 11 o'clock at night, and Ant and Deck used to do their rehearsal at 2 a.m. We were on at 3 a.m. And then you'd have to go to bed at midday, which you wouldn't, and then you wouldn't have enough sleep. So that was quite physically demanding. I think a show like Love Island is such a commercial success, and it's got, you've got a different type of pressure. So presenting-wise, I do one live show a week, and I pop into the villa every now and then, and that's lovely. But it comes with quite a demanding side through the media, and how women are spoken about in the media, and things that I feel very strongly about, and I kind of want to use that platform to talk about it, because people are like, it must be such a tough job flying back and forth. That's actually the easy part. It's kind of
really?
it's kind of having to deal with people writing things that aren't true and all that side. And I think a lot of people who have any type of public job, be it on telly or in politics, are kind of faced with that. And I find that the scrutiny really tough.
Because the more success, or the more people are engaged, of course, the more that welcomes then on the flip side criticism or scrutiny, or as we know, fake news.
Yeah.
So that definitely, would you say, is probably one of the most difficult things to deal with as a TV presenter?
And it's scary. I wrote a bit in my book about like thick skin, and people say, oh, you get a thick skin, and that comes in any job that you might have. Like, we're human, we're quite sensitive, and that's okay. It's okay not to have a thick skin all the time. Things will affect you. You can ignore things, but sometimes you can't ignore things, and I think that's important as well. No matter what career you're in, the more pressure you're under, you're still just as sensitive, and I think we shouldn't lose that. It's not a bad thing.
Do you struggle with kind of developing thick skin? I know personally I do anyway.
Yeah, I do. And I'm quite strong-minded, and I can speak up for myself when I have to, but I think it is okay to be emotional. And I'll go back to Mary Robinson, who we love. And I remember on the news years ago when she was in Somalia, and she, as president, she broke down and was crying. And I think a lot of her peers kind of either made fun of that or thought of that as weakness, but I think that is strength. And I think it's really important to be able to show that as strength. So I think, we live in an age where the online community has reached a whole level of scariness. And I think sometimes we forget how much power it can have, but then how much power we as individuals have to stop that and to talk about it, because it's still new.
And what's your, with so much prestige, and obviously you're a household name now, social media, is it almost kind of frightening to go on?
Yeah, it's like a love-hate. I love the fact that I have a platform and I can use it, and I've got followers that I can speak to. And normally they're like-minded people, and that's lovely. It's a huge power. And it's actually, someone said to me, a friend of mine, Jamila Jamil, who is an actress over in the States, and she speaks a lot about when it comes to body shaming and things like that. And she said, now with your following, you can probably have more power than a lot of newspapers have, because you've got more reach, to use it wisely. And it's really important that we do use that wisely as much as we can.
It's kind of crazy to think if you put out a post, it could potentially reach 2 million.
Yeah, it's really
people.
between all the socials, it's crazy. But it's nice as well. It means you don't have to put a press release out to a paper. You can kind of control your own narrative as much as possible. But then I do think the online community, there's a lot of anonymity out there. There's a lot of people who can say things, and that can be detrimental to people as well. So yeah, it is like a love-hate. And I remember when I was at DCU, actually when I was at Boston University, that's when I joined Facebook, because Facebook originated with all the universities, so you had to be on it. And I think we had Bebo in Ireland then, this is forever ago. So there wasn't really any Twitter, and there wasn't any Instagram. And when I started working on MTV, if someone didn't like me, I didn't really know.
Yeah.
When I was at school, if there was a party I wasn't invited to, I just didn't know. Well, now you see it.
Never.
Do you know what I mean? No, but there's probably loads of parties I wasn't invited to, but I just didn't know because I didn't see it online. Well, now I feel worried for the next generations. I think they're brilliant, and I think they're probably more empowered than generations beforehand. But there's a lot of pressure there. There's a lot of negativity constantly to battle.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As much as social media, it's fantastic in so many ways. We're more connected than ever. It is just a balance, I suppose, and monitoring how we use it.
And control it yourself as well. Remember that you're the creator yourself, so you can curate what you want to see.
Absolutely. So, Laura, as well as being, a constant present on our screens, you also are a phenomenal writer. Have you obviously a passion for journalism?
Yeah, I love writing. I love storytelling, and I always say I think Irish people are just natural storytellers, and even walking around Trinity and the grounds here, and the stories and the history, Samuel Beckett Theatre is somewhere nearby, and I think stories come in all forms, be it telling the news or making up stories or acting or you know, whatever you do, whatever side of law people may go into, that, you know, you're finding out a story in someone's story, and it's how you kind of put it out there. And I think that's kind of, as human beings, our natural instinct, so it kind of keeps us alive and sharing those stories. So I think writing is like a natural part of that, which I love. The book is, because I had written articles before in the form of like features and news pieces, but a book is like longer, takes more time.
How long did it take you to write?
Well, thank God for the pandemic. I shouldn't say that, but that's the only reason I got to finish it was because of that. I think I started it about over 4 years ago.
Oh wow!
And then I kind of gave myself. We talk about purpose. We used that word earlier on, when we were just chatting, and I think it's finding that purpose. And for me, it came at a time where it was a book I wanted to write the right way. And then I gave myself a purpose during lockdown of, you know, 1,000 words a day, and some days I'd write more, some days I'd write less, but roughly around that, and give yourself those. I always think your own deadlines are the best sometimes. And that's kind of what happened, and I'm really proud of it, because it kind of came at a time where I felt there was a lot of negativity in the world, and I was hoping for something positive out there. It came at a time where it feels that we didn't have control, and I wanted to take back that control. And the book was based on a song lyric from a song I really like, called Hold On. I think it's the first album I ever owned, and it's No One Can Change Your Life Except For You. So when something doesn't go your way, and it could be something that feels out of your control, like not getting a job, or it could be the guy you like not texting you back, but it's like, what can you do to make yourself feel better? What can you do to overcome an obstacle? Because you can't really rely on other people. Other people are great, and they can be your support network and your tribe, but at the end of the day, you are the person who is in charge of your future.
No, absolutely. And I think, you know, your book, I remember buying it, and I was trying to, like, you know, find out more about you, and obviously heard you from Love Island. I was like, whoa, I want to read Laura's book. But I ended up like obviously finding in a way more about myself.
Oh, I love that. That was like 100% my aim. So
yeah, no, like the advice and you have in it is phenomenal. I think I read somewhere that it was like, oh, Laura is like a PT for your self-confidence. And I was like, absolutely. So yeah, like it, you know, at the moment, mental health with the pandemic, and you know, it's a lot of people are grappling with personal struggles and, you know, just life in general.
Yeah.
Have you any piece of advice?
I guess everyone is so different, and it's sometimes it's easier for like me to say, oh, things will get better, tomorrow will be better, and like that's easy for you to say, and like I'm working my dream jobs, and I'm in a really happy, safe home. I think that was one thing that was really important during the pandemic. I realised how important home is, and to have a safe home, because not everyone does. And if you don't, to get out of it, and to find people who can help. So for me, I feel I can give advice, but I feel bad sometimes giving advice. I can talk about myself, and from that you might get something. And mine is just like, just if you're going through a tough time, like things do get better. Like we've all had those days, or we've had those breakups where you think, that's it, it's the end of the world. I'm never going to get over this. And you do. And things get better, and they do get better. And like, it's hard to see that sometimes. And things happen for a reason. I had, sometimes it's easy to give an anecdote from my own life, but I remember I auditioned when I think I was in my second year of university, maybe first or second year, and I auditioned to be in this television show. It was about a girl band. And I got down to the final Irish girl. It was in the UK, and it was like a few thousand people again. I love a competition. And I got down to the final 8. I just love it. I got down to the final 8, but I didn't get the job. And it was a Channel 4 show, and it was a band that was made. And I think they had 2 albums out, but it never really progressed. But I didn't get the job. But I got to finish my degree. And then I entered an MTV competition, which I won. So I kind of feel like everything happens for a reason.
It all works out.
So maybe that opportunity wasn't for me. I'm happy I went for it, but I didn't get it. But then I wouldn't have got MTV if I had got that, because I wouldn't have been a fresh face. So it's interesting how life works out that way. But you do still kind of have to push it a bit.
Yeah. And you know, Laura, as well as, you know, being a phenomenal writer, you're also an amazing activist. You know, your work with Because I Am a Girl. Would you like to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I remember there's a few charities I work with, and particularly, I suppose for me, like women and children I've always kind of connected with, and I work with plans because I'm a girl, and also I'm a Goodwill Ambassador for UNICEF. But because I'm a girl, I remember I was in MTV Studios and we were doing something about climate change with this brilliant organisation called Plan, and MTV were doing a collaboration with them. But then I start talking to this woman just about female issues, and I feel very privileged. I talk about like growing up and my mom and being allowed to kind of go off to London and follow my dreams, because not everyone has those opportunities. And they told me a little bit about this campaign they have, because I'm a girl, and I hadn't realised the stark kind of just contrast of my life to a girl's life who's born in a country that's not Ireland. And we can see that with the refugee crisis now.
Absolutely.
We can see that just because of where you're born, we're treated so differently. So I actually started sponsoring a little girl in the Philippines. I think she was like 3 or 4 at the time, and this was about 10 years ago, so she's a teenager now, which is mad. I went to visit her. But for me, I just was like, oh, how lucky I am to have been born in Dublin. Because if I was born somewhere else, I may not be living my dream right now. So I do feel really strongly about doing things like that, and I kind of sometimes feel, who am I to kind of speak out about these things? But I have a platform and I have followers, and I'm like, okay, I can tell them what I worn today because they do like that. but maybe I can also talk about other things as well. And I think life's about balance. Like, can you work on Love Island and be feminist? Yes, you bloody well can. And I think that's really important as well. And we're human. You know, we have so many different sides to us, and I think that's really important for me to be able to use that platform I have.
No, absolutely. And you know, obviously, Laura, throughout your career, you've had achieved such huge success, but of course, naturally, with life comes setbacks and drawbacks. So have you perhaps one particular setback or something that you found particularly difficult to overcome?
Yeah, I feel, I mean, there's loads of drawbacks. Like, as I said, the very first job that I went for and I didn't get, and I was devastated because I'd come so close to getting it. But then something else happens for a reason. I've found the last few years I've been better at using my voice to speak out about things. I remember with the press and papers, things will be written about you, and you're kind of told not to say anything. It's like, oh, you just add fuel to the flames, just don't say anything. And I remember years ago being really embarrassed that a photographer had taken an upskirt picture and it was printed, and I never commented at the time because I was like, I don't draw attention to it. It happens to every famous female I know. It's just
the norm.
It's the norm. It's part of the territory. Oh, it means that you've made it. Like, well done. And I remember feeling so mortified because I had been followed by this photographer, and then I didn't see him, and I was outside my own house with my dog, and this picture was printed, and I didn't say anything, and I was just mortified. And similar things have happened before where people write articles that aren't true, and I'm like, oh, I just don't say anything. And then now it's actually illegal for those. In the last few years, the Voyeurism Act was brought in 2019, and it was a brilliant woman called Gina Martin who got in touch with me a few years ago, and she had a similar situation happen to her. She's not on telly. She was just at a festival, and she went to the police about a picture a guy had taken and was sending around on WhatsApp, and she realised there was no law against it. And there's loads of these like
it's
little...
crazy.
It's
like,
crazy.
Think about it.
And there's loads of these little black holes. There's a brilliant MP, a Labour MP in the UK called Stella Creasy, and she's has a petition about you can at the moment it's legal for someone to take a picture of a woman breastfeeding and use that picture because there's all these little holes in the law. And I kind of different things have happened where I haven't said stuff, and this girl Gina spoke out about it, and I kind of got involved in the campaign, but a bit later. And I remember being really annoyed at myself. I was like, why did I not say anything then? And even now, things happen all the time in the press, and there's a lot of particular publications I won't work with for personal reasons and also for reasons of how they've treated other women that I know in the past. And because of that, I've been targeted, and I find that really hard. Because some days it makes you feel shit because it's a lot for one person to take. But then I just remember that things will get better. Going back to things will get better. Laws will change.
Absolutely.
I studied journalism, I studied media law, and I'm like, oh, how can they write that? That's defamation of character. That's not the code of conduct. But I think the next generation and you guys coming through, and I feel really hopeful for the world getting better, because it needs to.
Absolutely. Well, you know, Laura, you're a phenomenal role model, and your story has been so inspiring. So really, I thank you so much for coming here today. And is there, you know, where can we see you next, or hear you next, or read about you next?
Well, I'm back on radio, which is lovely. I was doing radio from home on like Zoom, which was really sad, but also nice. I was in my slippers. I'm back on BBC on Sundays and BBC 5 Live. We've got a longer show. Love Island will be back next year. Celebrity Juice, I do another show. I do like, all my shows are so different.
A quiet schedule.
I do a podcast, Castaway, which I love, because I love storytelling, so we do a podcast, and I've got another podcast about music coming out soon, and there's another TV thing, so I think, and maybe a book at some point, but I'll probably have to wait for the next pandemic to write it.
A lot to come.
Yeah.
Well, Laura, thank you so much
Thank you.
again for coming today. It's been an absolute honour, so